Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Operation DarkStar, Chapter 15 to Chapter 19, by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 15. She clung to his arm in the darkness, every so often tripping on the wet, slimy floor. I wish I had something sturdier to wear, Cynthia mumbled. You were hardly aware that boots instead of stilettos would be required for tonight's shift, Tarnay replied with a grunt. He was finding the effort of half-carrying her and his shotgun taxing, not to mention the tunnel they were traveling in was shorter in height than a regular man, forcing them both to stoop in the darkness. Shit, Cynthia yelped as the heel of one of her shoes snapped, causing her to stumble. Tarnay attempted to catch her, causing them both to fall. God damn it, Cynthia cursed. Tarnay landed on his side, and after taking stock, broke into a chuckle. This isn't funny, Cynthia growled. Yes and no. Tarnay stopped laughing. Sitting up, he squinted in the pitch black. Are you all right? He added. Cynthia was massaged her lower leg. I think I may have sprained my ankle, Cynthia winced. Tarnay's jaw tensed, the humor of the situation gone in an instant. After removing her shoes, the ex-Marine braced his weight against Cynthia and dragged her onward. How much further? Cynthia grunted. 100 meters tops. How did you know about this tunnel? I've worked here for 5 years. Been down in the storeroom more times than I care to count. I've never come across a hidden tunnel? Cynthia asked. It was pure luck. Dom asked me to fix one of the storage racks. That was when I stumbled across it, Tarnay said. And you never told anyone. Bad boy, Cynthia scolded in a mocking tone. I like secrets. I find it empowering, and in light of what's happening tonight, crucial in our survival, Tarnay mused. They could see a break in the darkness. Not exactly light. 2 bright red slits that looked like eyes. Tarnay stopped in his tracks and raised his shotgun, pointing the muzzle between the red. They both held their collective breaths. Tarnay took a tentative step forward. No, don't, Cynthia hissed. The ex-Marine ignored her warning, taking another step. Something flickered in the eyes. Tarnay stepped forward again. I'm an idiot, Tarnay whispered. What? What? What is it? Cynthia called out. She was struggling to stand, worried what might happen next. Tarnay strode towards the red eyes and peered into them. He stared long and hard. It's a storm drain, Tarnay called back. Why is it red then? Cynthia asked, hobbling over to look as well. It's fire. The streets are on fire, Tarnay said. After several failed attempts, scuffed knees and bloodied fingernails, the pair eventually crawled out of the sewer and onto the street above. The heat hit them immediately. Building and apartments everywhere were aflame. They sat in the gutter, tired, bloodied, and dirty. There's 2 more, a voice screamed out. Confused, Tarnay looked around to see a small group of people advancing towards them. They were carrying flaming torches, baseball bats, and anything that would bludgeon or cut. Get them before they kill, a woman with a bleeding head screamed. The mob was angry and out for blood. He realized they were after Cynthia and himself. Despite his fatigue, he climbed to his feet and leveled the shotgun in their direction. The next person who takes another step gets put down, Tarnay growled. The mob stopped in their tracks. However, they still held their weapons. I'm not fucking around, he roared. They now all looked uncertain. Some took several steps back. They think we're creatures, Cynthia whispered in his ear. What? Why the hell would? His voice trailed off as he caught their reflection in a nearby shop front window. They were black, completely covered in dirt and grime. Only the whites of their eyes and teeth could be seen clearly. They looked crazed and wild. "We're not demons, or creatures, or whatever the hell those things are," Tarnay announced. Still wary, the group lowered their weapons. "What were you doing crawling out of the drain?" a voice accused. It immediately grated on the ex-Marine's nerves. "Seeing as how I'm the one holding the shotgun." "That's none of you bloody business," Tarnay growled. The young man who had made the accusation immediately looked down at the ground guiltily. "Now that we've established, we're human. Go home," Tarnay added. The mob had lost its steam. They looked at each other uncertain. Tarnay was already planning their next part of the journey. "What now?" Cynthia asked. "I have a friend. I think he may be able to help us if he's still alive," Tarnay said. Chapter 16. Ignoring the screams through the wall, Scott led Bethany and her 2 children to the ground floor of the apartment complex, not knowing what would be greeting them on the outside. Cracking the door, Scott peered into the darkness of the lobby. After scanning the immediate vicinity and seeing no movement, he was happy they were alone, for the time being anyway. "Wait here," Scott whispered. The Delta operator pushed open the door and crept out. He kept his torch off and remained close to the walls. Training the muzzle of his weapon around the room, Scott searched for any threat and found nothing. Even with all the years' experience dealing with combat situations and stress, he still let out a big sigh of relief as he signaled Bethany to bring her kids out. They were like deer on hunting season, Scott thought, then kicked the horrible image from his mind. "Terrible analogy," he whispered. "Is everything okay?" Bethany asked, her face an expression of high tension. It just occurred to the Delta operator that to be in this current situation could only be made worse than by having your children caught in the nightmare as well. "We're fine, but we can't stay here," Scott said. Outside the lobby, the street sounded in total chaos. Alarms blaring, explosions, screams of people in terror, and the roars and shrieks of more hellspawn. "It's everywhere, isn't it?" Bethany asked. "I won't lie. I think it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. But I refuse to believe that this is everywhere. I promise I'll get you and your kids to safety," Scott said with such burning intensity that Bethany believed it entirely. 3 miles north of here, there is a factory in the industrial area. No signs, Scott said. "What is it?" Bethany asked. "It's an NSA crisis cell. There's one in each state. They work independently, in case all forms of communication go down in the face of a dire national emergency," Scott explained. "And you think they'll be able to help us?" Bethany asked. A man completely engulfed in fire ran screaming past the glass lobby doors. They both stared in shock. "I think this is as dire as it gets," Scott replied. "I'm just glad we have you," Bethany said. "Well, let's see if I can earn that trust, shall we?" Scott said with a grin. They left the lobby and entered the neighboring alley, one used primarily for rubbish and truck deliveries. Bethany attempted to shield her kid's eyes from the body laying in the middle of the road burning brightly. Scott assumed it was the same person they had seen only moments earlier running past the lobby, but with everything going on, there was no way to be sure. Something large passed overhead, wings like a bat that spanned several meters. It didn't appear to be interested in them. "We're vulnerable like this. We need transportation," Scott said. They were able to find a hard-topped Jeep 2 streets over, and after several minutes of fumbling and cursing, Scott was able to hotwire the vehicle. "All the crap that's going on out there is actually going to be good for us. Provide cover," Hopefully, Scott said as he pumped the accelerator and sped away into the night. Chapter 17. She found several towels and did her best to clean the blood from her face and hair, and pretty much every inch of her body. A couple of hours earlier, Kira had been out on a date with her boyfriend Mike. This was their fourth date and things were going smoothly. Dinner, dancing, a walk through the park. That was the moment when everything went horribly wrong. A blackness had opened up before them, so dark it eclipsed the night sky. Still holding hands, the pair advanced towards it, their minds unsure of what they were seeing. The black surface rippled, ever so slightly, as if they were staring into a pool filled with black ink and someone had thrown a pebble into its surface. Then without warning, a shape emerged. Human in size, it too was black. Except for a pair of red eyes, it scanned the area, unsure. Then it saw Mike and Kira. A mouth too wide to be human and filled with jagged white teeth, issued an ear-splitting shriek that sounded like madness incarnate. The couple froze as the hellspawn turned and charged. Mike pushed her aside and faced the inhuman beast, his fists raised as if he were facing a schoolyard bully. The creature hit him at full speed, and they tumbled to the ground. Mike never stood a chance as the beast slashed, clawed, and ripped into the young man. Blood rained down over Kira, sitting several feet away. She could only stare in shock as her boyfriend was torn apart. A passing man walking his dog yelled out his alarm, and in that second the creature turned his attention on him. Wide-eyed, Kira turned her attention back to the black hole from which the hellspawn had emerged, and much to her horror, she could see other figures slowly appearing, most of which looked nothing human. This latest turn of events was the final straw. With what was left of her sanity, Kira turned and ran for her life. As Kira was cleaning herself up, Meadow was wasting no time, locking all non-essential doors, creating barricades in open areas such as the main lobby, and most importantly, loading weapons and magazines. As the senior detective was going through ammunition boxes, Kira approached with 2 mugs of steaming coffee. She handed one to the surprised policeman. "Thank you. I wasn't expecting this," Meadow said, taking a long sip and sighing as the caffeine immediately struck home. "It's the least I can do after you saved." "Well, are continuing to save me," Kira said with a look of normalcy that Meadow hadn't seen since her appearance in his lobby. "The night's not over yet," Meadow replied. "Way to keep things in perspective," Kira said with a frown. "I'm a realist, but that doesn't mean this is over. Not by a long shot," Meadow said. "I don't mean to ask a lot of questions, but what now?" Kira asked. Meadow took another sip of his coffee, and it was clear there was no easy question. "We're as fortified as we can be. I've put the call out, but that was over 30 minutes ago. I'm afraid that no one else is coming," Meadow admitted. "And you were going to tell me this when?" Kira fumed. "To be honest, until I said the words just then. I didn't want to believe it myself," Meadow said. "So, now that the cat's out of the bag." "What now?" Kira demanded. "We take stock," Meadow replied, and led the young woman by the arm towards the stairs. They walked all the way to the roof, and after a quick check, they passed through and out onto the rooftop. The noise was the first thing that struck them. Screams of the tormented, roars of the damned, as well as other sounds of carnage. The view was the second thing that caught them off guard. Although not the tallest building in the city, not by a long shot, they could see to what extent the madness had spread. It appeared to be everywhere throughout the city. Keeping a low profile, Meadow moved towards the edge of the roof. What are you doing? You'll get us both killed, Kira hissed in fright. The detective ignored her pleas. He needed to get a better look. Even with all the power outages, the many fires throughout the city helped illuminate the goings-on within the streets. The detective was quickly joined by Kira, her curiosity overwhelming her fear. Local citizens were running for their lives, and in pursuit were creatures of all manner, size, shape, and insanity. They're everywhere, Kira gasped. It's worse than I feared. Help isn't coming, young lady, Meadow said grimly. So that's it. We just give up then? Kira asked, her eyes wet with tears. Meadow extended a comforting hand on the young girl's shoulder. That's not an option. At this point in time, we have each other, and if we can stay alive long enough, others will find their way here. I know you're scared. So am I. Trust me and I'll do my best to not let you down, Meadow said. There was real concern in his voice, as well as fire, and despite what was going on in the streets below, Kira felt a measure of comfort. Chapter 18. The ex-fireman groaned loudly. It took some effort to open his eyes, and when he did, the nightmare of the night hit him full force. Paula! Taylor! Where are you? Jared struggled to yell, pinned under the weight of the dead spider creature. The constant rain had washed the blood and pus and drenched his clothes to the bone. Desperate with concern, Jared slowly levered himself from underneath the beast and, crawling towards the edge of the roof, peered over the side to see where his wife and daughter were. Visibility was nearly non-existent. It took him several minutes before he was able to make anything out, and when he did, an icy feeling gripped his stomach. It took Jared several more minutes before he was able to climb down from the roof, the last 10 feet of which he risked life and limb by leaping from the attached timber gabling and hit the ground with a clumsy roll. Shaking away the fatigue and aching muscles, he raced towards the object in the grass. Scooping it up, it was a tattered piece of cloth, red and damp, and on a closer inspection, he could see a part of what looked like a unicorn. No, no, Jared said over and over. He looked around wildly. Several meters away, another piece of torn rag. The ex-fireman stumbling over himself, picking the rag up and examining it. To his dismay, it was another piece similar to the one he was already holding. The pattern belonging to the pajamas worn by his daughter Taylor. Following a trail of rags, it led towards the rear of his property. Not once did he question why or where the creatures he had battled only recently were no longer there. His only thoughts were of finding his family. It was beneath the trees that the trail ended. What remained of 2 figures lay side by side, their bodies mutilated. Wounds caused by teeth and talons had disfigured the mother and daughter beyond recognition. By some divine twist, their hands were still linked, Paula refusing to leave Taylor alone even in death. Jared slowed to a walk when he saw them together, his mind struggling to deal with the horror of the situation. Almost inconceivable to believe they were now gone forever. The giant of a man fell to his knees, his face in both hands. He wept openly, so hard and painful, he felt as if something inside had ripped open, and when he finally stopped, he turned his face toward the dark sky and roared a burning rage so powerful he dreamt only of murder and destruction. In the distance, a faint child's scream could be heard. Heightened Chapter 19. By the time she saw the fuel light, it was too late. The police cruiser lurched to a stop. God damn it, Sarah cursed, punching the steering wheel several times with the palm of her hand. The paramedic was quick to turn off the headlights as she slid down low in her seat. She knew her time was limited. Survival depended on movement, and after her last run-in, which had caused her to take 2 lives, she didn't want to be caught out unawares again. The ex-Marine scavenged everything she could from the vehicle. an all-weather black tactical jacket from the boot, and within its many pockets, she was able to store a box of shotgun shells, torch, 2 flares, and a Zippo lighter. The jacket was a size too big, but it was warm and concealed the holstered GLOCK underneath. The rain had stopped, but she feared it would only be temporary. It was replaced by a bitter cold that made her thankful for the jacket, although it couldn't completely protect her from the ache in her bones that was more from the horror she had witnessed than weather-related. Everywhere she turned was like something out of a Mad Max movie. One thing about being in a war zone was that you had 2 states of mind. Take in everything, but also focus on one thing. Sarah knew she had to be aware of what was going on around her, let her instincts control her muscle memory. However, she also had a mission, and that was get to her mother. Her first priority was getting away from the main areas and streets. It would mean that the trip would take longer, but it also meant that it would keep her away from larger groups which so far had proved to be attracting and luring the demons in. The last thing she grabbed from the car was a thermal beanie. She tucked her short hair away underneath. Sarah was hoping that with her features covered in dirt and grime, the large jacket, and finally the hat and shotgun, nobody would take her for a helpless woman. She chose her path by the fact that it was darker than other areas. Even with her shotgun at the ready, she kept her eyes and ears peeled for any such movement or sound. Keeping low, the paramedic took a knee every time she heard a noise nearby, resisting every urge in her being when she heard cries for help, and to not assist went against every moral code she had in her. The only justification she made to herself was the fact that every man, woman, and child roaming the streets looking for safety was requiring help. Today there were no heroes, only victims and survivors. Get to Mum. Get to Mum. Sarah muttered this over and over like a mantra, every time she felt her nerve tested, every time she felt tempted to deviate from her primary mission. The ex-Marine remembered the one person who was truly counting on her. Hearing the inhuman sounds of creatures approaching from behind, Sarah quickly turned down an alley and collided with a shadowy figure. Rolling with the impact, she was quick to bring the muzzle up, activating the tactical torch mounted to its side. Still laying on her back, she was shocked to see 6 faces peering down at her. 3 small children and 3 bikers. "Whoa. We're not going to hurt you," the tallest of the 3 said. He was armed, but he was indicating that it wasn't aimed towards her. They all looked scruffy and dirty. The 6 of them were also sporting multiple cuts and scrapes. The last encounter with people had led to her nearly being choked to death. She kept the shotgun trained on them. "He's telling the truth," one of the kids squeaked. Her resolve was quavering. "They just saved us from that," the kid added, pointing back down the alley. A gigantic creature that almost defied description lay dead. It was clear that an epic battle had taken place moments earlier, as the alley had nearly been destroyed in the process. One of the other bikers stepped forward. He was bald and had a face like a baseball mitt. "You look like you've had a hell of a time tonight, too. I don't mean to rush you as you think over your options, but we have to get these kids to safety," Popeye said in a surprisingly calm tone. "Shit," Sarah growled, remembering the reason why she had turned down here in the first place. "More of those things are coming," Sarah added, lowering her shotgun, the tall biker helping the paramedic to her feet. The 7 of them now scrambled to find cover in the wreckage and shadows. They all held their breath and waited. The ground beneath them shook as creatures almost as big as the surrounding apartments came crashing through the adjoining street. Their dark silhouettes looked like a circus procession from hell. One of the children gasped in shock, then slapped a hand over her mouth. Nobody moved. One of the passing creatures stopped at the mouth of the alley. Glowing eyes like a lighthouse scanned the area. It saw its monstrous brother dead on the ground, but paid it no mind. Continuing on, they all let out a collective sigh of relief. In the distance, the screams of the creature's victims could be clearly heard. They all knew at once the catastrophe they had all narrowly avoided. "I don't think we'll be going back out that way," the shorter biker with a scar running through one eyebrow whispered. He held out one hand towards Sarah. "The name is Bruce, but everyone calls me Bam Bam," he said with a smirk. Sarah took it. "My associates. The tall fella is Jordan and the handsome bald individual Popeye," Bam Bam added. Sarah gave a brief nod to the other two. "What about the children?" she asked. "I'm afraid we haven't formally been introduced," Apache replied. "I'm Beth. This is my cousin Laura and my little brother Sean," the oldest of the three said. Sarah knelt down next to the children, her shotgun carefully moved to one side, as to not frighten them. "How old are you, Beth?" Sarah asked. 9, Beth replied shyly. "Well, Beth, you three are the bravest kids I've ever met," Sarah said, without a hint of bullshit in her voice. Her next question was a little harder to ask. "Where are your parents?" she asked, although she already had guessed what the answer would be. "Dead. They fought the devils so that we could get away." Beth let out a sob, then looked at her younger brother and fought the pain and emotion. Sarah ignored her own advice and hugged the girl to her. "Hey, it's going to be okay," Sarah soothed. Beth was masking her feelings better than she should, but the paramedic could feel the girl shaking in her arms. Still holding the girl, she turned her attention to Bam Bam. "What's your plan?" she asked bluntly. "You mean, apart from not getting eaten?" Bam Bam replied, although he regretted his choice of words in front of the children. "You know what I mean," Sarah replied, annoyed. "We were on our way to the police headquarters building on 1st Avenue, Apache said. "Really? You three were going to the police, how ironic," Sarah said, failing to hide her amusement. "They do have the largest assortment of weapons stashed in the city," Apache shrugged. "And it's probably the best place to take these kids," Bam Bam added. "Come with us," Beth pleaded. This request clearly tore at the young woman. She desperately wanted to get to her mother, but the idea of leaving 3 small children in the hands of a motorcycle gang was not something she could ethically do. With her jaw tensed and shotgun in hand, Sarah stood up and faced the remaining members of the berserkers, holding Beth's hand in one and the shotgun in the other. "Whether you want it or not, I'm coming with you," Sarah challenged. The 3 men regarded the petite young woman with the determined expression, knowing that there would be no way of denying her request. "Works for me," Popeye said with a grin showcasing his many missing teeth. His 2 buddies chuckled at the older man's reply. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Operation DarkStar has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.